Hello, everybody. I'm a little out of breath because I just ran here from another meeting, but it's great to see everybody. My name is Kara Wallace. I'm a faculty associate with the China Studies Center. I'm in communication. Yeah. And so today we wish to welcome everybody to the 12th presentation in the new lecture series, the Lieberthal-Rogel Center for Chinese Studies for winter 2024. The complete series it's available here today, I think somewhere. It's also on the China Center's website, and we post it out weekly. And just a couple announcements before we get started. On Wednesday, April 18th at 9 a.m., the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden will present Artist Talk, Contemporary Photography in China. And this is a live Zoom webinar in Chinese and in English. A flyer is available here today with the QR code on it, and the links are also available from an email that has been shared about the events, like through the email notification. Please let us know if you wish to be added to that email group. And the link is also available on the Hirshhorn Museum's website. Next week, the next and final presentation of the winter term for the 2024 new lecture series will take place. That's on Tuesday, April 23rd. It will be given by Wang Feng, professor of sociology at the University of California, Irvine, who will be speaking on China's age of abundance, origins, ascendance, and economics. And so today's presentation will be given by Shu Yang, associate professor in the Department of World Languages and Literatures at Western Michigan University, where she specializes in literary, cultural, and gender studies on modern China. She has published in leading journals, including Gender and History, Nan Nu, Clear, and Modern Chinese Literature and Culture. Her recent book, Untamed Shrews, came out under the Cornell East Asia Series by Cornell University Press in July 2023. And now Shu Yang is continuing her exploration of gender and modernity by writing on the discourse of hysteria in Republican China. And today she will be speaking on Untamed Shrews, negotiating new womanhood in modern China. So please join me in welcoming her.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And thank you so much, Kara, for the introduction. So maybe I can add a quick update just following that. So another press just contacted me and also my publisher to discuss that maybe we can translate my book into Russian. I know during this time of the period. So I feel very excited, and they think that this will be appealing to the Russian and the Central Asian book markets. So I really look forward to seeing my book coming out in another language. And mentioning that, it also makes me wonder if someday I will see my book coming out in Chinese, especially to be published in mainland China. So I have some high doubts about that. And then I think today we're going to talk about why it's tricky to translate a piece about the shrew into Chinese, especially to put into the mainland Chinese book market. Okay, so we're going to continue. So today I will be talking about the shrew / the new woman. We will see what happened to the traditional Chinese shrew across the pre-modern modern divide. The shrew was negative in the pre-modern context, but was repurposed in the 20th century. She manifested herself as the new woman, including the suffragettes, the Noras, the revolutionary radicals, the communist model wives, and more. To tell her story, today I will begin with the term shrew. So English scholarship describes this traditional Chinese character type as the shrew. I just follow suit in my book to continue using this term shrew in my study. The Chinese terms for the shrew include three main types or categories. The first is poor fu, the unconstrained, transgressive, and polluting woman. The character poor, as you know, in Chinese, it means to scatter, So 泼妇 literally means a woman who scatters, spills, or splashes sorts of fluids. One motive that is most often linked with the 泼妇 prototype is that those women often dump their chamber pots or buckets of nice soil over the heads of their enemies. The illustration here is from the late imperial novel Dream of the Red Chamber, 红楼梦, which shows a shrew named Wang Xifeng is dumping a bucket of nice soil on the head of a man who tries to seduce her. The second type is yinfu or 荡妇, the wanton, lascivious woman. The third one is hanfu, the violent woman. Compared to the Western concept of the shrew, which is mainly comical, the Chinese concept is more threatening and culturally repulsive. In the pre-modern text, the shrew stands as a foil to the ideal Confucian womanhood that is quiet, peaceful, tolerant, and submissive. By contrast, the shrews are the female villains who are loud, jealous, angry, violent, polluting, and sexually powerful. Here I have more images of the shrew from traditional Chinese fiction. Enjoy. According to researchers of Mingqing or late imperial Chinese literature, shrew literature reached its peak during the 17th century, featuring a large number of full-blown comedies, satires, and novels. Then it came to its demise as China stood on the verge of modernity. In my book, I claim differently. I found that the shrew imagery and trope not only survived into the 20th century, but were central to the ways that the new woman was portrayed. While in pre-modern China, shrew stories focused on domestic strife, such as husband and wife hierarchy, in the modern period, they started to be used in public discourse and imagination for describing women's rights and their rising status. My lecture today will focus on the yinfu, in English, the lascivious woman, especially yinfu and revolution. I will introduce 3 moments of her in modern China, looking at the suffragettes, the Nora model, and Jiang Qing's connection with Nora, as well as 破鞋 during the Yan'an period. Yeah, I'm gonna explain 破鞋 a little bit later. So moment 1, the radical Chinese suffragettes in early Republican China. Many of those women, they were once female militants during the Xinhai Revolution, starting from 1911. After the completion of the revolution in 1912, the women veterans channeled their energies into the women's rights movement. Tang Chunyin and Shen Peizhen, they were 2 major figures, known for their radical profile. Compared to the moderate suffragettes, the radicals demanded immediate exercise in public spaces and adopted a revolutionary approach. They stormed the parliament, they cursed and slapped male politicians, they kicked policemen, they smashed windows, they ransacked offices of newspapers. In the eyes of the masses, the women were literally acting out the popular vision of the shrew in public. So if you ask me, where did the traditional shrews go in modern China? So I will say, well, some of them came out from their homes to appear in public. Their violence, originally directed at incapable husbands, now was targeted at disappointing male politicians. Their tongues and palms were used to scope and slap the men who stood against their rights and the professed democratic spirit of the republic. Those women were indeed transgressive and troublesome ladies. In the press, modern uses of the shrew imagery captured the force and offense of them in popular understandings. And today I bring a few cases to share with you. In this cartoon, the woman's image looms so large, with her big foot in Western-style high heels jabbing the body of a small policeman. It exaggerates the horror of female power through violence. And also, someone has pointed out to me that if you pay attention to the shoes the woman is wearing, so those are black, heavy shoes. And people say that those shoes were worn by men during the French Revolution. So if you take that into consideration, this may add some connotation of gender transgression as well. And in addition, I invite you to look even further. So this illustration can also be very implicitly obscene. So if you see the sashes there, so they go past over the woman's crotch. They kind of resemble oversized labia and suggest an erotically entertaining effect. So it's never just violence. So if we want to tantalize the audience, there's always more going on. In the next cartoon, even more is going on. A young woman with bobbed hair is giving a speech at the podium while breastfeeding her baby. She uses one arm to hold the baby and lifts the other arm in the air as if she's speaking with passion. With her blouse wide open, she exposes her breasts to the male audience sitting under the podium. A woman appears in the political sphere, a long-defined masculine domain. She's even nursing, a behavior that is strictly prescribed to the domestic sphere. Everything marks her dismissal of gender separation. By captioning the drawing as obstacles to women's suffrage, and by fantasizing about the exposed female chest and the leaking breast milk, the cartoon expressed its denial of women's public presence through the trope of female pollution. In other words, the suffragettes in the press not only splashed blood, scattered pieces of broken glass, but also spilled female bodily fluids or effluvia, which is traditionally linked with the type of the obscene shrew, signifying sinister omens and the disastrous power. We can recall some similar scenes in late imperial shrew narratives. I have listed one here, 显示姻缘传. So marriage bound to awaken the world, which came out in the 17th century. So in that novel, there are descriptions of women setting out on a public pilgrimage to the mountain. They are depicted as running like a pack of dogs, cursing, defecating, menstruating, nursing babies, and yielding orders back and forth. The unruly, leaking female bodies are highlighted as symbols of social transgression. After looking at the woman speaker, now I want to invite you to look at the audience. It is interesting that the audience here seems to be intentionally avoiding looking at the speaker, either lowering their heads to look at the table or ground, or hiding underneath their heads. The men all avert their eyes from the woman. It is as if saying that even the audience of random men feels shame and shuns her, yet the woman dares to continue breastfeeding and speaking. So, does this cartoon remind us of any incidents happening today? About 100 years later, the fantasy about a nursing female politician seems to have become reality. I'm sharing two contemporary images with you. The one in the top right corner features an Australian senator whose name is Larissa Waters. She made history by becoming the first woman senator to breastfeed in Parliament in May 2017. The woman in the lower image is Tammy Duckworth. If you know her, she is a senator from Illinois. She brought the issue of motherhood and politics to worldwide attention by giving birth while in office, and later took her 11-day-old daughter to a Senate vote. Both women received conservative criticism in the media for being obscene and transgressive. And it struck me for how long this debate about women's biological and public or political roles has continued across temporal and cultural lines. The depiction of unruly femininity and the female bodily fluids reached a new height in the late 1920s in a novel called The Unofficial Erotic History of the Republic. It features a fictional suffragette character called Sun Beizhen, who is quite a dramatic figure. One chapter depicts Sun invites two male senators to her hotel room to talk about women's suffrage. Her loud, hoarse voice welcomes the men before they see her, which resembles the first appearance of Wang Xifeng in Dream of the Red Chamber. Her manner is very bad too. When the men enter the room, they see her lying in bed with her legs widely splayed apart, just like a prostitute waiting for her customers, and her big natural feet resting high on the edge of the bed. Later, when Sun argues against gender differences, she suddenly stands up and takes off her Western-style long skirt, exposing a pair of pink, flowery Chinese pants. The men see her calmly walking to the chamber pot that is placed in the same room. She pulls her pants down and sits on the pot directly in front of the men. When she asks one man to pass her a cigarette, she urinates into the pot, making a loud noise. Several props come from the pot as she relieves herself and quotes Madame Roland, "I'd rather die than give up equality and freedom." Exactly at the moment when she shouts out her slogan, there are props from the chamber pot again, resembling the beat of a music box. The next day, unsurprisingly, as you can guess, the chamber pot is overturned. The filth just shoots up and sprays all over. The scene sets up a parallel between Sun Beizhen's oral eloquence and her fluid, excretory flow. She does not differentiate between the openings in her upper and lower body, showing how the shrew disrupts order and discipline through the routine functions of her natural body. She refuses to contain either her speech or her excreta, such as her sweat, gas, urine, or excrement. In traditional literature, the upper and the lower bodily openings or gaps signify trouble, contamination, and offense. Here, they serve to reinforce Sun Beizhen's identity as the over-talkative and polluting shrew. Things get worse later. When Sun later cuts her toenails, the nails jump and spatter. One piece of the nails falls exactly on the lips of one senator and gets glued there in his saliva. The senator hurriedly wipes off the nail with his hand and pulls out a handkerchief to scratch his lips. This detail is important because the image of the saliva points to a hidden fact that the men have been experiencing sexual pleasure in seeing this prostitute-like suffragette. The text does not privilege the man over the shrew, but equally exposes the man's hypocrisy and failure. If we look closer, the illustration also visualizes mutual sexual pleasure. In the bottom half of the image, the two men have drawn much closer to Sun Beizhen and are sitting in erect attention, pointing directly at the exposed vagina, peeping out from under her skirt, only inches away from her hand, which is rubbing her foot. The painting on the wall beside her bed echoes the thrust of the man's extended finger. The exposure of her natural feet is just one more detail of a shrew's desire to take pleasure, not shame, in her body. So this makes me think so much because I come from the Asian background and I know how Asian women live. And then as a Asian woman, we always take a lot of shame in our bodily functions. So we lack those shrewish moments, like Sun Beizhen here. And then when I go to Japan, I observe too. So Japanese women, they do a lot, right, to cover up the smell, the sounds when they do the biological thing, right, in the toilets. So And then, you know, Japanese toilets are very fancy. It can play music, right, to cover up the sound. And then later you can use your perfume just to spray over the room to cover up the smell. So the next person, when he walks in, he would feel not repulsed. So we do a lot to cover up, and we do a lot to take shame in our bodily biological functions. And those women, they just take pleasure, they take delight in doing or fulfilling their biological function. When we compare this to late imperial literature, we see that the disparagement of the shrew goes further. Textual details here are more visceral in exaggerating and super stigmatizing the shrew's alien body. While in pre-modern stories, there could be no indication of actual political change just because of women wreaking havoc. During the term of the century transition, the Chinese men indeed saw themselves as being challenged and threatened. On the other hand, although the shrew trope was still mainly used negatively at this point, it is possible to say that some male writers and critics took delight in how shrewish women can hold power over flawed male characters, especially the politicians. They strategically planted their dissatisfaction with the early Republican environment in their shrew/suffragette figures. Now we'll continue to observe the shrew's new fate by looking at the next era, the subsequent New Culture era. During this new period, the women's suffrage movement made significant advances when women's liberation took on a new urgency. But what was most striking during this time, however, was the making of the Chinese Nora. So Nora is a well-known character in Henry Ibsen's A Doll's House, who walks out on her husband and leaves her children behind. She was introduced to Republican China during the May 4th period as a synonym for the new woman. The question was, how best to write the Chinese Nora? Again, some male intellectuals, they took inspiration from the shrew, although they like to claim that their models were based on positive, newly new female qualities. I have two names listed here, Ouyang Yuqian and Lin Yutang. So Ouyang was one of the three founders of modern Chinese new theater. His major Nora plays all have to do with the character of the shrew. The shrew came out in 1925, and then later Pan Jinlian came out in 1928. And actually there's one before those two, which is called After Returning Home, 回家以后, came out in 1924. So those are the three major Nora plays that Ouyang Yuqian wrote. And then you can find shrew images in each one of them. Lin Yutang, he also published something in the same year with Pan Jinlian, 子见男子, which is translated as Confucius saw Nancy. Both Nanzi and Pan Jinlian are notorious yinfu in Chinese history and literature, but now they were elevated to the role of a Nora. So today I will use Pan Jinlian as an example. If you don't know her, I think I can do a little basic translation. So Pan Jinlian is a character from pre-modern Chinese literature, including The Water Margin from 14th century and Plum in the Golden Vase from 16th century. She's referred to as a licentious shrew and bloodthirsty villainess, the archetypal femme fatale. Her name is the last thing that a woman would ever want to associate herself with. And you can find a recent example in Liu Zhenyun's novel, and also this is a blockbuster movie. It's called 我不是潘金莲. Someone also translate as, I'm not Pan Jinlian, or I'm not Madame Bovary. So you see how women hate this name. No woman won't be associated with Pan Jinlian. So what does Pan Jinlian do, right? That earns her this bad name? Not much or a lot. So first of all, she's very pretty and also licentious. She has a lot of sexual energy. She commits adultery and ends up poisoning her husband, who is described as a short, ugly, but honest man. Eventually, she's killed in a very brutal way by her brother-in-law. So with this profile, we can imagine it is almost impossible to redeem a woman like her. But the modern dramatist, Ouyang Yuqian, he sees value in this yinfu and uses her to protest Confucianism. And I have a quote here from Ouyang Yuqian. Men often, step by step, push women into crime or depravity. In the end, men shun responsibility as well as deride and curse women as if they were innocent. How come no one in the world has ever questioned it? There are also men who simply fear that women do not become depraved or brazen, because otherwise, how can they be noble and dignified? How can they find places for their entertainment? Confucian principles were made with supreme skill. For thousands of years, women could not jump out of the trap. My play is really asking for trouble. Using the Shu's tongue, the author goes on to defend yin or female promiscuity. So this is a very famous quote from the play Panjinian. Panjinian refutes their charge on yinfu. Whenever a man wants to abuse a woman, there are lots of men to back him up. Only women who meekly allow men to torture them to death are chaste and exemplary. Anyone who survives the ordeal is a whore. A woman who isn't willing to put up with a man's abuse is a criminal. The words of Panjinian bring to light that the true source of social unrest are the patriarchal mindset and the contentment of women in the name of righteousness. She exposes the collusive tricks men have long been playing to keep women under control, classifying good and bad women, inventing female virtue and vice, and imposing unjustified epithets to reinforce social discipline. By doing those, Panjinian discloses a problem of deception that is much larger than her own infidelity. Well, looking at this passage, we may feel that the play seems to tone down the force of yin by shifting to intellectual explanations. But as I will show you now, Panjinian is by no means less promiscuous than in previous texts. So my example here is the killing scene at the end of the play. The killing scene at the end shows how the play heightens her sexuality. In pre-modern texts, Panjinian has her garment ripped open by the hero before he plunges his knife into her breast and cuts her open. Here, Panjinian takes the initiative in exposing her body to the killer and other onlooking men on sight. This enhances her yinfu nature and revalues her personal revelation as an indication of a deeper truth, of her conscious and effective use of her sexual power over men. As a result, the hero is tantalized and paralyzed, only being able to complete the killing in a trance. He is no longer the unwavering superhero, but one who must admit that he and society have been hypocritically denying the knowledge of her desirability. The performance photo here you see is from 1920s. So with Ouyang himself playing Panjinian, because Ouyang was also a very famous female impersonator at the time. So the photo captures the shocking effect of her exposing her chest to the killer. And later you can find a more explicit case in this contemporary work of art by Li Zhanyang. And you can see he really highly dramatizes the hero's lust towards the woman. So far, we have seen the suffragettes and then the Nora depictions. So let's take a pause here and look back on the journey that the shrew traveled all the way from the early Republican years to the late 1920s. From those disgusting suffragettes in the press to the revived yinfu in the Nora place, things are really looking up, right? So this gives me a lot of hope and then push me to look further. So I start to wonder, how about in reality? Would licentious, unruly, shrewish women receive recognition or sometimes even promotion in real life in modern China? So I wanted to know those questions. Beyond the representational space, were there any yinfu/Nora models? Would a free or loose woman in 1920s or 30s China be lionized as a Nora or lambasted as a modern version of Panjinian? Well, Republican China never failed to surprise me. So yeah, I found that reality was a lot more complicated compared to the text. So when I looked into some performances or women's personal interaction with being Nora, I found more complicated scenarios. First of all, women who dare to perform Ibsen's Nora on stage were subject to slut shaming, or should we say Panjinian shaming in this Chinese context. The content of the play were reason for discriminating against women who played the role. As someone said it, only yinfu had the guts to do it. Female teachers and students were punished or expelled from school for their Nora performances. Also, the same happened to Lan Ping. And you may know her as Jiang Qing or Madame Mao. So her early name, Lan Ping, it means blue apple, but it was marked at the time as rotten apple, Lan Pingguo, to refer to her loose nature. But it was this controversial actress that excited the audience in 1935 for her new style performance of Nora as a woman rebel, who is very different from the dominant soft beauty images at the time. People loved the fiery version of Nora. The press had very high acclamation for Lan Ping's spirited onstage acting. But very soon, when it came to her real life, the praise degenerated into personal attacks. She was quickly reduced from a Nora to a yinfu. At that time, Nan Ping was involved with Tang Na and other men. Scandals lit up the Shanghai press, even making their way into prominent national papers in Beijing and Nanjing. The papers depicted the men as victims and identified Lan Ping through attributes of the yinfu. For example, she is feisty, sharp, sexually attractive, and is insatiable, and shameless in wanting to be public transgressive. When Lan Ping left Tang Na, making the man attempt suicide twice, the newspapers shifted its position to defend male privilege after initially adopting a progressive stance in celebrating the onstage Nora. They refused to look at Lan Ping as a positive Nora by accepting the similarities between her desires for herself and those of the modern spirited woman they advocated in the arts pages. That which they celebrated on stage was framed negatively and labeled as shrewish off stage. When press reports did mention Lan Ping's connection to Nora in her personal life, it was only used as a form of criticism, like the quote in my slide. She'll do a real Nora. She'll play the role in Tang Na's apartment, just as she did at the Golden City Theater. When the time is ripe, she'll walk out on him just as Nora walked out on Helmer. Lan Ping, who once played Nora, must be rather confident about men. Even though Nora had been a cultural icon in China for decades, the mainstream press of 1930s Shanghai was still not ready to validate a real-life Nora. The conflict between Lan Ping's stage achievement and her failure to receive support for her personal Nora moments speaks to the patriarchal surveillance of women across representational and realistic spheres. The critics, at their will and pleasure, could destroy a Nora in real life as easily as they could build one in the symbolic space of the theater. So how did Lan Ping respond? She seemed to care less about labels, such as Nora, yinfu, or panjinian, than about the power she could claim by turning insults into demonstrations of her ambition and ability. So here I have some quotes from Lan Ping. They're all very self-evident. Haha, good heavens, if they would be so brave in fighting against Japan, then really, China would definitely not be defeated. Unfortunately, to use it against one young woman, haha. I'm certainly not going to be like Ruan Lingyu and kill myself because I'm afraid of what people might say. Nor will I retreat. I will just wait without moving a muscle, wait for them to curse me in large bold type. Why should I be just a pitiful little bug and let others walk over me? No, Lan Ping is a human being and will never retreat, especially in the face of such shameless tactics. And especially the last one, you must remember me as only as a fiery female. 我是一个泼辣的女性. As a woman unwilling to appear weaker than a man. Yeah, so she said, 泼辣. She could not say that, please remember me as a 泼妇. Because you know, or you see how deeply rooted the shame of a shrew is in Chinese cycles. In Chinese psyches. So for Lan Ping to claim herself, she can only say 泼辣 instead of 泼妇. But if you look into pre-modern texts, you see that the connotation of 泼辣transformed in modern China as well. So in pre-modern texts, 泼 and 辣, they are associated with unruly figures. For example, on Journey to the West, the king, Monkey King, he is a wanton monkey, right? 泼猴. And also in Dream of the Red Chamber, Wang Xifeng is referred to as a 泼皮, which is ruffian, villain, and also 辣子. So 辣子 is pepper or peppercorn. So 泼 and 辣, they are not desired femininity in pre-modern China, but the term or the connotation shifted in modern China. And later on in Great Leap Forward, you'll see the Communist Party, they really like the term 泼辣, and then they want women to be 泼辣 in order to merge with the masses to do communist revolution. So yeah, you see this, the shifting in terms of the connotation of the true qualities. Like what Ouyang Yuqian said in Panjinian, anyone who survives the ordeal is a whore. Lan Ping survived and thrived. She adhered to the new woman ideal, even when the real world expected her to do otherwise. Later, the fiery Lan Ping fled Shanghai to join the communists in Yan'an in the late 1930s. Her trajectory foreshadowed an even more imposing wave of cooperation between the shrew and the communist states. So now we're moving on to the third moment, yinfu in Yan'an. So, after studying Ouyang Yuqian and Lan Ping, I learned my lesson. So reality was a lot more complicated than the text. And also Republican China was so full of uncertainty. So when I started the Yan'an period, my presumption is like the yinfu ladies would definitely not have a good time in Yan'an, right? Because this is revolution and this is reality is more complicated. So at least they should have to go through a kind of education or re-education in order to purge themselves to be on the revolutionary team. And this is also the party has been telling us all the time. So for the bad elements to be able to contribute to the revolution, they have to go through transformation or re-education to become useful. So I bear those assumptions in my mind when I started on the Yan'an period. However, Republican China never failed to surprise me. Again, I found something new. Yinfu were going strong in Yan'an. So yeah, I'll share two examples with you. Communist documents of this time show approval for shrew-type women. In 1943, Fu Anxiu, if you don't know her, so she was the wife of the communist leader Peng Dehuai's wife. So she wrote a summary on the first stage of the women's movement in the northern anti-Japanese democratic base. She praised the dissolute women, 风流的女人, in the villages for playing a key role in promoting communist gender reform. Those women were conventionally labeled tramps, or in Chinese, 破鞋, literally broken shoes. This is a common informal term in Chinese, referring to debauched women or unlicensed prostitutes. Fu Anxiu thought those women were actually brave revolutionaries. Quote, they are the ones daring to speak and act, and they easily open themselves to new ideas, unquote. Outspoken, mobile, spirited, and defying, the adjectives formerly associated with the shrew now actualize the revolutionary requirements for women. Fu Anxiu continued to report that she and her colleagues had been making special efforts to recruit 破鞋 women into the Women's Association. She was impressed to see the so-called bad women diligently disseminating new ideas, such as gender equality and women's liberation. Those bad women even motivated ordinary women to join the campaign. And please note that those women didn't have to go through education or transformation in order to be this revolutionary. Another case of the manipulation of the shrew's power by the state was the issue of the illicit sex partner. In Chinese, 皮伴. 皮伴 was originally 皮盘. It is mainly used in the Wuhan dialect for illicit sexual relationships. In an article published in the Qi Monthly in 1941, 皮伴 is defined as unlawful sexual relationships occurring before, during, and after marriage or in widowhood. It was named as one of the two most urgent problems in the countryside, with the other being the need for women's united front in the anti-Japanese movement. So you see here, a sexual issue was given such a great amount of attention. The article celebrates the heroics of the loose women, even more fully elaborated than Fu Anxiu's approval. It centers on the benefits of the 皮伴 women by comparing them to the well-behaved and dutiful ladies. Its conclusion is that wanton women have a greater ability to carry out revolutionary tasks. Quote, they are extremely mobile, running around everywhere to work. They like to take initiative and take the lead. They are the indispensable trailblazers for women's liberation, unquote. Those accounts describe the high-profile presence of the yinfu during the revolution. And you may wonder, were those accounts accurate or were they credible? So we can use one example as proof. It was reported that at certain points in the campaign, the masses even mistook the Women's Association for the Wanton Women's Club, 皮伴妇女的集团. Presumably, those women must have enjoyed a high degree of visibility and superiority as the vanguard of rural communist feminism, since otherwise their appearance would not have been so confusing and overwhelming to observers. And I have also used Yan'an literature in my book as additional evidence. The fate of the yinfu undergoes dips, twists, and turns at different points of ideological fluctuation in modern China. the ups and downs of her fate point to the tenacious hold of the shrew on the state and the society. I hope you enjoy the 3 moments of the yinfu. Thank you so much.
So at the beginning of the 20th century into the Republican period, you get for the first time periodicals for women. And of course, some of those were actually written by men.
Yes, most of
But
them.
anyway, do you see any difference in the discourse about independent women in periodicals just for women as opposed to the mainstream?
So yeah, thank you for the question. So though there are some journals written by or organized by the women themselves, like Tang Chunyin. She has a few magazines, journals, periodicals under her name. So I talk a little bit in my book, the women's writing versus the men's writing. So as I can recall from the periodicals under Tang Chunyin, the suffragettes. So she's okay with being violent, being the violent shrew, but she's not very okay with being the obscene. So they draw a boundary between the labels. So I can take one being violent because he thinks violence is not a bad quality, especially during that revolutionary transitional period. And you need to have some physical, spiritual power in order to get it through, right? So, yeah, she thinks violence in some cases, can even be taken as a compliment. But she and also others, Shen Peizheng as well. So they are very strict about being called a yinfu or absent shrew. So they even went to the court to ask for justice when someone, for example, public scandals about their relationship with men. So yeah, see, so here,
女丈夫will be okay.
荡妇,
女丈
女丈夫.
夫
It's like a 花木兰, like 花木兰. Yeah, but if you're gonna smear my sexual morality, that's not okay. Yeah. So why I choose this to mainly focus on the men, because shrew is a male-authored trope. And then in pre-modern China, it came from the male misogynic anxiety, right, related to powerful, threatening women, and especially wives at home, because in pre-modern China, women lack public identities. It's mainly wives who dominant the relationship. So that is why I want to focus on the men's writings to see how the same term or the same trope undergoes shifts while still in the hand of male writers. So that is why I only refer very slightly look at the publications by women. Yeah, to add to that, this quickly reminds me of something. This is a difference between those Jewish depictions and also similar plots in the West, because male writing female or male writing women in a demeaning term is not something new, right? In Western literature, you see during the 1920s, you have this phenomenon called the castrating bitch. So that phenomenon or that category of writing, it reached its full bloom during the 1920s after the First World War. So the castrating bitch, I think it stands as a very good example with the shrew's fate in modern China. Because in American literature, for example, you can recall like The Sun Still Rises, right, by Hemingway, and also The Great Gatsby. So they all came from the 1920s and featuring those kind of threatening, powerful women. So those women, they could have no victory in male-authored literature in America. So their best reward is to have a lonely life, and that's all. And then in some bad situations, they can die tragically or get into accidents. So this is not the case in modern China. So when you look at those shrews, yes, they wreaking havoc, but they can walk away. They can be intact. They don't require punishment or taming anymore, because men find that we need this unruly energy. And then, especially during the communist periods, women were used to be put on the front line, right, and to be part of the communist feminist movement. So this is a big difference when I compare how men writing women in different contexts. Yeah, thank you for the question again.
Thank you, Professor. I have a quick question on both Nora and Pan Jinlian, because Nora was introduced to China, I believe, in the late Qing or early Republican era. And so Pan Jinlian was a figure that was composed in like late Ming period. So when you are comparing those two figures, especially in terms of Ouyang Yuqian's play, so do you see a specific reflection on the late Ming picture, or do you think Ouyang Yuqian is more just specifically reflections on the generic Confucianism thoughts?
Yeah, there are, thank you for the question. So there are many plots going back to the original storyline in, for example, Water Margin, and also Plum in the Golden Vase. But it's a play, it's a lot shorter, so it could not cover everything that you have seen from the pre-modern stories. And then there are a lot of modern messages or modern voice embedded in the play. So I will say it's not a loyal reflection back on the pre-modern text, but he's so bold to use Pan Jinlian, because it's almost mission impossible, right, to overturn the verdict, right, for Pan Jinlian. But he thinks, it's a time. Maybe we shed new light on those bad women in pre-modern texts. So this is different from other dramatists like Guo Moruo. He also writes some new theater based on historical figures. There's a sequence called 三个不一样的女性. So that is 三个叛逆的女性. So that is based on three historical figures. For example, Wang Zhaojun and Nie Yin. So I didn't use those in my story because I think they lack the attention to reading previously bad women models. So it's unlike Pan Jinlian and also Nanzi. Confucius saw Nancy.
Yeah, I just have a very quick question, because you bring up the Nan Pin's story, but I think, have you considered about the differences between the women's their own social status? Because on the other hand, we have a very famous story between the Xu Zhimo and the Lu Xiaomai. And actually, when I read the old newspaper, like the writers did submit an article to lab at Lu Xiaomai and Xu Zhimo's relation, and then Lu Xiaomai did have another after Xu Zhimo passed away, and they lived with another guy. All of the scandals going on. So I don't know, have you considered about from the beginning, the women are in the different social status and the outcome?
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for the question, and I think I have a lengthy footnote on that. So those couples, and especially the role of those wives who behind the back of those famous husbands. So those stories, they are less often told. And then this is our time to think about their stories. And also, yeah, I thank you the question because this is also how I started my book. So I started my book because I see a gap between what I used to know and then what I know when I started my PhD in the States. Because back in China, I used to translate a piece for a Swiss scholar. So that piece is on the inheritance of Shen Congwen managed by his wife, Zhang Zhaohe. So by translating that piece, I get to know that Zhang Zhaohe is so capable. So she not only managed to manage the inheritance, the legacy of Shen Congwen in such a very professional way, but she also manages the role, the status, right, as a wife and also a public woman very nicely in Republican China. So at that time, I was only I was only doing my MA in China, so I feel new women were truly new women. So they stand their own ground, and then they have a voice, they have a role in society. And later on, when I came to the States to start my PhD, we had some seminars on the new woman, and then the teachers were asking us to read stories like Lu Xun's 伤逝, so regrets over the past. I don't know if you read here for the modern seminars, but we were reading those pieces, 伤逝 or the New Woman series by Mao Dun. So those new women images, they are so different from the kind of Zhang Zhaohe images that I used to know. So those women in Lu Xun's pieces, they are the object of male criticism. So they have to elevate themselves up in order to meet the requirements of their husbands. And then often the time they fail. They fail to meet the expectation of their new man husbands, and then they end up very miserably in the story in different all kinds of ways. So this really strikes me. So they don't match, right? The real women like Zhang Zhaohe, the strong wives of those powerful men, and also those women written by those powerful men, they don't match. So I see a gap here, and then I think maybe I can do something by looking over the May 4th canon to look at how new women were depicted in other works. So that is why I locate, for example, Lin Yutang's 子见男子. So that piece was not highly acclaimed at that time. I think it's because it tells a new story of a yinfu, right? And also I locate some comic popular stories who are actually very radical, to your surprise. So those things, by reading those, I really broaden my scope. And I think that now, yeah, I can write a book to kind of fill up the gap. So the new women, the new women living on the pages of those May 4th great writers, they should be re-examined or to be read against with those real shrewish-like women images that you can find in other places. And get back to your comment, I also think about other couple relationships. For example, Xu Guangping behind Lu Xun. So recently we have found some articles written by Xu Guangping. She's not happy being the woman behind Lu Xun because Lu Xun most of the time using her as a personal assistant, right, to managing, to copywriting and also copy editing his pieces for him. But you know, Xu Guangping actually received very good education, and she has goals and expectations for herself to be a public career woman. But she has to let go much of that in order to fit into the role as Lu Xun's wife. So I see, yeah, there's a lot going on, struggles, pains, negotiations on the side of the so-called new women. And also even more, Chen Bijun, Wang Jingwei, and also Hu Shi and Jiang Dongxiu. There are a lot more famous husbands with a shrewish, powerful, strong wife. So I think maybe one book is not enough, and then we should look more into those real scenarios of those new women. Yeah, thank you for the question.
I have a question from the virtual audience. Thank you for a wonderful talk. Your remarks today focused on the trope of Nora. Can you say more about the trope of Mulan figured at all in the rhetoric? For example, did women use the figure of the female hero to counter criticisms of women being shrews?
To counter the mainstream,
You get around the option of considering them to be a shrew.
by using Mulan to, okay. Mulan is tricky because at the beginning of Republican China, she was well received. And then, for example, like Nu Zhangfu, right? We want to be like Mulan because she is sanctioned by the state. And then she got elevated to a public role and gained fame afterwards. But
Marry
yes, but later on, the fame kind of faded away because, Mulan returned back to the domestic sphere afterwards. She still returned back to be a daughter and maybe a wife later. So this is not what the early radical suffragettes wanted. They want to stay in the public realm and then ask for more, especially the equal rights to vote. So yeah, there's a shifting of evaluation concerning Mulan's reception.
I have another question from the virtual audience. Thank you for a great talk. I realize you were focusing on male representations of the figure of the shrew in various ways. I wonder if you could comment on the effect of shrews or shrewish behavior with respect to how they contest or reinforce the broader and dominant patriarchal ideology and power dynamic. Do some so-called shrews subvert the hierarchy while others sustain it?
Like real representations.
Does the shrew go against the male hierarchy, or are there ways in which it supports the male hierarchy?
Yeah, I think it depends on the shrew herself, right? And then, as I mentioned, especially during the revolutionary period, there's a cooperation between the shrew and then the state. So it's like a win-win situation. So the state uses the shrew's energy, and then the shrew uses the state to move forward. So yeah, it can be a very tricky position for the shrew to survive.
Questions? Okay.
So you stop with a great leap forward,
Yes.
but if you had jumped to the next play about Pan Jinlian, it's an interesting contrast. In 85, I think Wei Minglun wrote a play that premiered in 86. And his solution is to say, if only they had had the divorce law, the marriage law, and then Pan Jinlian just could have divorced the dwarf and everything would be just fine. So that was a very simple kind of solution that they came up with.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't go that far into the post-war period. Yeah, Wei Minlun's new writing is well known.
They presented the victim too.
Yeah, and then Ouyang Yuqian is actually Ouyang Yuqian's Pan Jinlian is considered almost the earliest rewriting on the Pan Jinlian story, and that is why I used it. And that remark, this has provoked a lot of discussion later on, even if during the Mao's China. So Zhou Enlai. So Zhou Enlai was the premier and also Minister of Foreign Affairs, if I remember correctly. I studied my politics very well back in China. So yeah, Zhou Enlai in 1961, he went to the Beijing Renyi, so Beijing People's Art Theater, to watch Pan Jinlian, and Ouyang Yuqian was there in 1961. And then they were very thrilled because a big figure is coming to watch the show. So they give it what they have. They perform very well in front of Zhou Enlai, but Zhou Enlai was not happy and eventually he put a pause on the show. So the government banned banned Pan Jinliang after the visit of Zhou Enlai. And Zhou Enlai has proposed two things to consider, and those are also the reasons why the show could not go on. So the first reason is wuda. So how can you treat wuda like that? Because wuda is just a very lovable peasant. So he's a honest farmer, 老实的农民. So how can you treat a 农民 like that? So that is the first reason. And then the second reason is he's not happy with how Pan Jinliang does about the whole thing. So he thinks, yeah, Pan Jinliang feel sexually repressed. She's not treated well, and then she can ask for divorce. She can walk out. She can commit suicide, kill herself. Those things we accept, and if she do one of those, we will take her side. But no, she survives. She thrives, as I said. What Ouyang Yuqian said is, whoever survives the ordeal is a whore, right? So Pan Jinliang exactly is like that. She survives. She did not choose to kill herself, and that upsets Zhou Enlai. And Zhou Enlai said, yeah, she can do one of those, but she didn't choose those. She chooses to kill a nice farmer, so we could not let the show continue. So that's the two reasons to put the show out of the scene, right? So it's banned ever since the visit of Zhou Enlai. So yeah, it is a lot. And divorce, mentioning that, I talk about the Yang period, but it's not that simple or clear cut, because divorce, it quickly backfired on the government. So at the beginning of the radical communist feminism, yes, divorce is highly encouraged. And then it does work to give wife to some poor peasants. But later on, divorce became such a pain, right? And then the government has to take take steps to stop this. So that is called the Yan'an 整风 运动. So the Yan'an rectification movement. So they have to put a pause on this. So they have to shift from radical communist feminism back to family harmony. So yeah, it's tricky, and the government is also kind of learning throughout the whole process. It's never one solution that can fit every situation. Yes.
So I had two questions. The first one was whether or not at this particular moment when we see the sort of object of object against which men might be defining themselves is shifting. So on the one hand, we have a new Chinese identity defined against the West, but also we have the reaction against the Manchu Qing state. And so I wondered, because we see the West manifesting in the figure of Nora, but I'm wondering how much of this reevaluation of a Chinese new woman, which involves this rethinking of the figure of the shrew, is happening in conversation with any kind of anti-Manchu sentiments in sort of reevaluating the Chinese tradition. Because in the sense that the shrew is an inversion of a Confucian moral position, then it's against the sort of Chinese tradition. But in this particular moment, when we have pretty vocal opposition to the Manchu Qing, I wonder if that plays into sort of thinking about who should be the sort of enemy of the new moral stance. If it's not the yinfu any longer, does the Manchu woman or Manchu leadership of the Qing dynasty take on that role?
Wow, this is a dimension that I haven't examined in my book.
Well, let me ask the other question too. So the traditional discussion of the shrew in terms of yin and yang, really embodying the yin to an excessive degree. I'm just wondering to what extent that yin and yang language and its development in medicine and other areas of traditional China, to what extent do you see that reflected in the modern literature on the shrew? Is there still a discussion of yin and yang and them being out of balance when in these modern depictions of the shrew?
I think the example of the chamber pot lady that talks a lot of the excessive yin, and then the terminology that you can find, although it came out in late 1920s, yeah, it touches a lot upon yin and yang. So yeah, I didn't get to touch everything because it's a long chapter on Sun Zhen, but yeah, later we'll see she's doing something on her foot. And then there's some bacteria going on, and then the idea of the excessive yin, and also there's a detail about she needing hot water to bathe herself every day in order to get rid of that itchiness. So that all points out to the presence of yin or the excessive yin. And also this is related to the idea of yin in Chinese, because yin originally in pre-modern China, it refers to excessive water, so or flood. So that is the original meaning of yin. So you see the water imagery and also bacteria. So they all reflect back on the yin yang dichotomy. Yeah, but I believe there are other examples too in later literature. Thank you for the question.
I'd like to thank Dr. Xu Yang for coming and her excellent talk. Thank you so much.